Our next guest is the first American to take home gold at the World Judo Championships, a CEO from Seven Generation Games and the Julia Group, and mother to one of the best athletes in the world today, Ronda Rousey, Dr. AnnMaria De Mars. Welcome back to Submission Radio.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hey, it's our absolute pleasure. Welcome back to the show. We got to ask, the past week has been full of highlights for the family as you spent your last few days in Brazil. Now that you're back home, we can understand it's a huge trip. How would you evaluate the entire experience?
Tiring.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great, but I was in North Dakota on business, and then I came home for a day, flew to Brazil, was there for almost 2 weeks, flew not home, but to San Francisco to drop my youngest daughter off at a soccer camp, came home, I'm home for a day, and I'm leaving for Utah. So I've lost track of how many different time zones. So, yeah, I just wake up at random hours and work.
Wow, and that's not even any mention of Brazil either.
Oh, no, that was Brazil too. So, yeah, and that was great. I mean, the biggest thing was, Ronda won, and then I spent the week with all four of my daughters and my grandson. So that was pretty wonderful to just have everybody there.
Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful experience. Let's just talk UFC 190 quickly. Ronda came in and destroyed Bethe. Just wondering, what did you think of her performance? It must have been another proud day for you.
Well, I thought it was good. I think she maybe could have thrown her an armbar earlier, and she didn't do it just to make a point because she wanted to knock her out. So I didn't think that was the wisest decision because, like I told her before the fight and after the fight, somebody might have a 1 in a million chance per second of beating you, but if you can beat them in 10 seconds and you beat them in 60, you gave them 6 times as many chances as necessary. So, I mean, I understood her point. I understood that she was upset about some things that Bethe said, but I think she would have been wiser to just take the first opportunity to present itself. But you know what? All's well that ends well.
Yeah, of course. 34 seconds, that's pretty good. It's hard to complain. But when you say she could have thrown in an armbar, are you saying she could have probably ended it earlier than that?
I thought that first throw she did, it could have been a little bit tighter. And she said, well, she didn't feel like she was in the greatest position going to the ground, so that's why she let it go. But I felt like if she had focused a little more on judo before the match instead of just, boxing, that she would have got that first one. But it's always easy to judge. Armchair quarterbacks are a dime a dozen that you could sit there after the fight and, when you weren't involved and say, you could have done this, you could have done that. So, she did well. But, we talked about it after the fight, and it's like I always tell her, you can learn from winning or you can learn from losing. And it's a lot more fun if you learn from your mistakes and winning.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mention armchair quarterbacks because me and Cashman must be pound for pound some of the best armchair quarterbacks out there. I was just
that's pretty much our whole job.
Yeah, we don't get paid, but we enjoy the position. I was just going to mention, Ronda really wanted to drag this fight out, but those comments that you made about, the longer the fight goes, the bigger you're giving a chance to your opponent, I think they really did play a part in her mentality going into this fight. Do you think that if you didn't mention that stuff to Ronda, she might have let it drag out even a bit longer than 34 seconds?
I don't know. I know I certainly wasn't the only person. I told her, all of her sisters told her, it's a stupid idea. Her older sisters told her, her youngest sister just said, Ronda knows what she's doing. Everybody's a hero to the little one in the family.
Yeah, of course. Well, last time you were on the show, we covered your amazing career, obviously, as a judoka. Other than finishing the fight as quickly as possible, did you have any other advice for Ronda going to the fight?
I told her what I always tell her, which is no one's easy till after you beat them. So at her training, she trains hard. I think it was really good having Justin Flores with her, who's been Olympic level judo player. He didn't compete in the Olympics, but he was on several world teams for U.S. Was an alternate the Olympic team, and he and Ronda have known each other since before she started judo. He used to babysit her because his father and I were teammates back in the day. And, Justin really pushed her a lot in practice. So I think that was really good. And he even brought up another judo player that was about her weight that's a guy. So I think having that really helped. And, I think it's always better to talk to people about things before the event. The people that always want to shove their face around, at the event are those who want to get some attention. But really, when you're in a fight, you're in a judo match, whatever, you're going to win or lose with what you brought. The time to say the things you have to say is 6 weeks or 6 months in advance when people can do something about them. So I think her training was good as far as, Justin really pushed her hard. She works with Henner and Huron Gracie, who in the tournament. So interestingly, their program isn't known for being ultra competitive, but Huron and Henner themselves are really good. And so she worked with them a lot, and they're very wise. And they do a lot of things like have her get into disadvantageous positions, which she normally wouldn't get into in a match, but they have her do that a lot. So if it does happen, she's comfortable there and fighting out. So she's had some really good people around, for training. So I think that was good for her.
Yeah, well, when we spoke to you last, you mentioned how obviously being the mother to Ronda Rousey, you worry every time she steps in the cage. Considering how much of an underdog Bethe was it still the same case this time, or could you breathe a little bit easier knowing how much of a favorite Ronda was?
Oh, no, I worry about all my kids every day. They make fun of me about it, too. Jennifer's 29, so Mama, fine.
Yeah, I know. We our moms are pretty much the same. I just wanted to ask you, Ann, you mentioned before Bethe's comments about the family, specifically your former husband and Ronda's dad. I don't know if anyone's asked you. We obviously saw how Ronda reacted to it and how she felt about those comments. I'm just wondering how those affected you, if assuming they affected you in any way.
I just thought, what a bad person. I mean, it's not the first time something like that's happened. When Ronda was about 13 or 14, I used to say that I had never met a child I didn't like, because how could you not like a child, right? I mean, they may have idiot parents. Right before Ronda goes out to fight a match in one of our junior nationals, this kid says to her, right before they step on the mat, "I'm glad your daddy died."
Wow,
and I just
brutal.
thought, who raised you? And yeah, Ronda just went out and picked her up and thumped her through the mat. I just thought, yeah, so the world has too many idiots in it. That's all I can say.
Yeah, certainly. And the way she handled the situation was very, very inspiring for a lot of people. And I mean, there was a wonderful moment that saw you guys leave the belt at a judo academy in Brazil. Just wondering, when did you and Ronda first decide you'd be doing this, and what did it mean for the family to be able to do that?
Well, I thought it was a great thing, and I told Flavio that they should auction off and sell it and buy things they need for the kids. And he said, "No, there's no way I could sell this. We're going to keep it here." Another thing that Ronda did while she was in Brazil, and it's been going on, is sign up for some fundraising program called Represent.com, and they made up these shirts that said "Don't be a DNB."
Yeah.
And they've sold 24,000 of them so far, and the money goes to Dee Hirsch Mental Health Services in Los Angeles, which Ronda has done some fundraising work for before. Like once a year, she'll do a clinic and donate all the money to charity, and she did one where it was called "Don't Throw Up, Throw Down," and it was to raise money for Dee Hirsch to have programs for women with eating disorders. And the D&B shirt, so far they've sold 24,000 of them in 2 days, and that money also goes to Dee Hirsch. So, yeah, I think those things for charity are super, super important.
Yeah,
because,
Sorry, continue.
Well, it's like my grandmother said, and I think a lot of people's grandmothers tell them the same thing, that every talent you have is a gift from God, and you should do something to show that, it wasn't a mistake to give it to you instead of somebody that was, not so worthwhile. And so I think, Ronda has a fair amount of talent, and she's used that to help people out in multiple ways. And, I'm her mom, so I'm biased, of course, but I don't think she gets enough press for that, She gets a lot of attention if she says, tell somebody to fuck off, but she doesn't get near as much attention as she, donates $20,000 or way more than that to some charity. So.
Well, I actually didn't know that, so that's good to know. But I did see the DNB t-shirts come out. It was literally only a few days ago, so it's amazing they've sold 24,000 of them already. Just take us in there, just really quickly. DNB, Do Nothing Bitches. Rhonda mentioned it on the conference call we're actually a part of. What's the story there? And did you make up the term Do Nothing Bitches, or was it your mum that passed it on to you?
Oh, my mother would never say anything like that in her life. Right. Are you kidding me? In fact, my mother's comment, I don't know if you've seen the Entourage movie, but
of course.
My mom went to see it. My 82-year-old mother went by herself to see this movie, and then she calls me up and she says, "Tell Ronda that she was the best part of that movie, but her grandmother thinks there was too much sex in it." So I had not been to see the movie. So I went to see the movie with my youngest daughter, who is 17. And throughout the entire movie, every time some scene came up, Jolie would lean over and say, "I can't believe Grandma watched this movie."
Oh, yeah.
So, No, my mother would never ever say him. I don't think I used that exact phrase, though I might have. But you know what? I always told my girls, though one of them was a cheerleader. I will not say which one, so it's up to her. But is I don't want you to be a cheerleader. I don't want you to be the person cheering on other people doing things. I want you to be the person doing things. And yeah, I really, really strongly feel that you shouldn't be standing on the sidelines of life, clapping your hands while somebody else does things. You should be out there doing them yourself.
A great example was that actually, and a big moment for the family was when Ronda's book came out because it was co-written by Maria, who's another one of your daughters. It was it must have been an interesting experience for you because not only does Ronda have a book out, which is a major sort of milestone, a big moment for her in her career, your other daughter wrote it, and it's a huge project for her as well, and something that really pushes her career along. And then at the same time, it talks about a lot of stories from your life and your interactions with Ronda, some of the arguments you guys had, some of the moments you guys went through, the special moments, the occurrences, all from Ronda's perspective. I mean, what was that like? Because I know you would have read the book and almost a whole family experience putting it all together.
It's all out there now.
Well, it was interesting because, you know, they run things through lawyers because in the U.S. we sue each other for a hobby. And the lawyer kept saying, has your mother read this book? Has your mother read this book? And Maria said, my mom is not going to sue us. You don't need to worry. We're not that kind of family. And I said, no, I won't sue you, but I am not waiving the right to smack both of you upside the head. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the book was written from Ronda's point of view. I did not agree with everything in it. You know, I think it was generally, there were people that came off, I think, better than they deserved and other people that came off worse. Obviously, my view on when she left home and her view are very different. But, yeah, I think it's something they say in marriage and family therapy, that every marriage is actually two marriages, his and hers. And I think it's true that every family is actually as many different families as there are people in it. I thought the book was good. I thought it was extraordinarily well written. You know, of course, I'm a little biased. And it's funny because some woman who's a speech pathologist contacted me and wanted to know if Ronda's diagnosis when she was little was apraxia or dyspraxia. And I don't remember exactly. It's been a very long time. I mean, it sounds familiar, but I don't really remember. But basically, when Ronda was little, she had great difficulty learning to talk. And her sisters often were the only people who could understand her, and they would talk for her. And she would say something like, I don't know. And we were like, what? And she, you know, I mean, the poor little kid, I mean, she said a tiny little thing. She'd just be struggling to make us understand her. And one of her sisters would say something like, Ronda wants chocolate milk. And whatever she had said had sounded nothing like, I want chocolate milk. But we would get her the chocolate milk, and she would be happy. And it's funny because Maria and Jen used to actually literally speak for her, and now they're writing a book where Ronda's talking to Maria, and Maria's kind of writing it out. So it's just really funny how it kind of came full circle.
Yeah, I was going to use that word, full circle, except on a much higher level. That's pretty amazing. Before we let you go, just want to ask you a few questions future-wise in terms of Ronda's fighting. You know, Cris Cyborg is the fight that everyone's talking about. Doesn't look like Cris will ever make the weight to fight Ronda, especially with the recent IV ban in the UFC. Seeing how Ronda is a fan of challenges, do you ever envision her taking Cyborg up on a catchweight after she finishes beating up, you know, essentially the rest of the division?
No, because Ronda's very motivated by spite. And she doesn't like Cyborg, so she's not going to do her any favors. So, no, I don't see that ever happening. If she came down to 135, Ronda would fight her tomorrow in the living room. So, Ronda's a pretty honest person.
That would be a packed couch session with popcorn and I imagine some other delicious snacks. I mean, Cyborg got upset at Ronda over some comments that she made about her using PEDs, saying on ESPN that she cannot say anything about my doping. It was 2011. I've passed 6 tests, and at the same exam she's doing because we're in the same organization now. People often find it hard to trust someone once they've failed a drug test once. Considering how long ago, do you think Cyborg deserves the benefit of the doubt?
I am very skeptical. It's sort of like people who are alcoholics who have a DUI and they get arrested for driving while they're intoxicated. They say, "Oh, that's the first time I ever did that," and it never is. So, I mean, generally, when people get caught for alcohol or drugs, statistically speaking, they have done it many times. Now, I can't say about her. I don't know her at all. But all I can say is that generally when people get caught with alcohol or drugs, it's not the first time they have ever done it unless they're the unluckiest person in the world. So I think anyone who has failed a drug test is under suspicion. And certainly if we have learned anything from the Lance Armstrong case, it's that people can be doping and still pass those tests. You know, eventually it comes around, I think. And so given that there's plenty of evidence that people do manage to get around the test and do drugs, and that they don't get caught every single time, and that she got caught once, I think that leaves her open to suspicion. And, you know, it's a little hard. It's kind of like if you cheat on your wife, and then later on, you're like, well, how can you suspect me? Well, because you did it before. You know, it's a little hard to, when you get caught at something, then say, oh, how could you think I would do that?
Yeah, now trust is a big one, and you made some interesting points. We've seen one of the last questions on Cyborg. We've seen Ronda beat girls at their own game recently, namely Bethe Correia, you know, the brawler getting knocked down. This is a hypothetical. Let's say Cyborg makes the weight, the fight happens, everything's great. Do you think if she fought Cyborg, she'd beat her in the stand-up to prove a point? You mentioned she's driven by spite.
I don't know. Like I told her about Bethe, I said, you know, if you want to make a point, you could do a backbend on somebody's arm that makes a point too.
Yeah, that's right. I can imagine maybe her approaching you saying, I want to knock this girl out, and you going, wait a minute now, just maybe armbar her in the first 20 seconds. That might be better. So there's a common phrase, I don't know if you use it in Australia, that you dance with them what brung you.
You what?
So
you dance
with them what brung you. In other words, if you go to a dance with somebody, if somebody takes you to a dance, that's who you dance with.
Okay.
So if you make it to a certain point using judo, that maybe that's what you should think about.
Me and Casper didn't have many people to take to the dance. So we don't understand.
That's very sad.
That point is lost on us, sorry. Before we let you go, you know, she's looking at a third fight with Miesha Tate. Just, you know, out of curiosity, what would your prediction be on how the third fight goes? You've obviously had the pleasure of being right there the first two times when they fought. She's been able to drag Ronda out of the first round previously in their second fight. What do you think? How's the rematch going, the second rematch?
I think it will end sooner. I don't think she dragged Ronda out as much as Ronda wanted to beat on her longer. And I asked Ronda about that after the last fight, because I thought there were a couple of points that I saw where she could have finished her earlier. And she said that she wasn't taking a shot unless she thought the odds were 100% me getting it, 0% her getting an advantage. So that she fought more cautiously in that situation because she couldn't stand Miesha so much that she wasn't taking a 1% chance that Miesha might even get the slightest bit of advantage. So, and again, I'm not sure that's how I would have done it, but I wasn't fighting. So, you know, sometimes I ask her, like, well, what was your reason for doing that? And, you know, and she has reasons. I don't always agree with them, but in that case, I could see her reasoning that if you really can't stand somebody, you don't want to take a 0.5% chance of them getting an advantage, that you pick your shots more carefully. And so maybe it takes you a little bit longer to win than if you had taken more of a chance. You know, if it was, say, 95% you, 5% them.
Great point. Now, before we let you go, just wanted to see if you had any memories. Obviously, the passing of a huge legend, Roddy Piper, someone who's been really special to everyone, even here in Australia, to me and Casper. And we know you had a big relationship with Judo Jean LaBelle. You meant a lot to Ronda Rousey. Do you have any memories of Roddy? Did you cross paths with him much throughout sort of his career and his interaction with your
much.
family?
I mean, every now and then he would just be at the gym, you know, like Jean's birthday parties, stuff like that, you know, things that everybody would come to. And he was just a really nice guy. I mean, you would not have guessed that he was somebody, you know, very famous and successful. If you met him, he would just be like, hey, how are you? Would you like some cake? So it was just very sad. And I know Ronda talked about how whenever she would talk to him, he would say how, oh, it's so great, the relationship you and your mom have. My son is my best friend. And, he said that many times. So I think that, when she heard that he passed away, that was her first thought of how, heartbroken his family must be. And that's why she said she wanted to, dedicate the fight to him, because she knew how, when you lose somebody in your family, you feel like your world has ended, but everybody else in the world goes on, because it's just Saturday. And so, I think he was a really nice man. He was always nice to Ronda before anybody had ever heard of her. Once you're very successful, everybody's nice to you. But he was really nice to her when she was just some kid in the gym.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We read his book when we were a lot younger, and definitely a touching book. Final question before we get out of your hair. Just wanted to know any updates on 7 Generation Games. What's the latest news? Obviously, for those who don't know, you make educational video games. What's the latest with 7 Generation?
Well, they're actually doing a public announcement in a few days, so I can't tell you the name of it, but we were accepted into an accelerator, so as one of the top ed tech companies in the country. So we're flying out of here tomorrow. I just got home a few hours ago. We're flying out of here tomorrow.
You never stop, do you?
I know. But we have a game that we backed on Kickstarter, and I don't know if you get the Skullduggery Pleasant books out there, but Derek Landy, who's an author in Great Britain, has written from Ireland. They've sold millions of copies of that, and he backed us on Kickstarter. And one of the things he got, because he backed us for enough money, was to be in our game design meeting. So it was crazy having him in the meeting, having Rhonda in the meeting, because she plays way more games than everybody else in the family.
Yeah.
And so we had a game design meeting from Brazil with Derek Landy and Rhonda. So that was super, super cool. I keep telling her she should play Tanith Lowe if they make a movie of his books, because there's a character in there who's blonde and a fighter, just randomly. I mean, this book, the books were written years ago. So that's Forgotten Trails coming out, and there's a part in it where Rhonda was actually having us rewrite the part where she shows up in the game. So that's really cool. Because math is like sports, like anything. One of the reasons that people don't do as well at is they give up. They give up too easily. And so that's one of the things. So you'll have to play the game to see how we're programming it in to keep people from giving up.
Well, you may... Sorry, I was going to say you may have just convinced Dennis and myself to take up maths again via 7 Generation Games. You guys are definitely going to have to be Googling 7 Generation Games the next few days. We look forward to that press release to find out exactly what is happening. Don't forget to go to www.7generationgames.com. And of course, you can follow AnnMaria on Twitter, Dr. AnnMaria. Make sure you do. Lots of great information and inspiring blog links up there. Again, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, you're very welcome. And now I have to go cook dinner for my grandchildren, because that's what I do besides armbar people.